Vedete? No. Mi vedete adesso? Ero sicuro di stare trasmettendo. Adesso mi confermate che mi vedete? Mi confermate che ho parlato per un quarto d'ora al muro? Oh, salve! Ho parlato al muro per un quarto d'ora. Sono molto contento di questa cosa. Per qualche motivo OBS non mi ha fatto partire la live. Bene, bene, a posto. A posto. Ci siamo allora, salve, salve. Ero sicuro di essere online. Vi chiedo perdono. Perfetto, mi vedete? Bene, 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 molto bene. Allora, ce l'abbiamo fatta. Chiedo scusa, ero sicuro di essere in live. Quando ho visto Giorgio che ha scritto quarto d'ora accademico mi sono preoccupato. Oh, Benson, hi. Ci siamo. Non abbiamo perso niente. Sì, meno male che hai scritto. Sì, perché io ero sicuro di star parlando con voi e tutto. Già. Comunque, allora, ripartiamo tutto da capo allora. Discorsino tutto da capo. Salve a tutti, benvenuti. È il Bazar di Vialatta. Siamo qua per guardare il debutto di Delittia in maniera Karlov. Siete, spero, presi bene come me per questi nuovi spoiler. Come sapete, grazie a Wizards of the Coast e grazie a Wizards Italia, ieri sera via mail mi è arrivata la mia carta in anteprima che vedrete il 23. Sì, il 23 sera intorno alle 6 in premiere uscirà un video dove vi rivelerò una nuova carta di Delittia in maniera Karlov, e questa cosa per me è enorme, è importantissima, mi ha scaldato il cuore e non so che dirvi, è stato molto bello entrare in questa cosa qua. Non posso dirvi niente, non chiedetemi niente, sappiate che è una carta di Magic, non è una carta di Yu-Gi-Oh! Questo ve lo posso dire. Però mi dispiace, ma queste cose lo sapete che io i leak non li faccio, soprattutto in live, perché nel senso sì esatto, che unico italiano, questa è una cosa che mi ha lasciato molto, mi ha scaldato molto il cuore. Tra l'altro, come vi dicevo prima che parlavo al muro, come vedete siamo meno soffocati perché ho aggiornato la lente da live con un qualcosa di un po' più largo e un po' più arioso, così che mi fa piacere che i cuori di un'intera community siano scaldati. E come vedete siamo live a quest'ora perché ho cambiato lavoro di recente e lavorando al mattino finalmente possiamo fare le live e vederci questi eventi qua tutti insieme, che è una cosa che speravo di fare da anni, davvero da anni. Infatti questa live per me è importantissima proprio per questo, perché siamo tutti insieme e finalmente possiamo vederci dal vivo tutti insieme, un debutto di un set nuovo, e questo set in particolare per me è importante proprio per la carta di preview. In più, altra cosa che vi ho detto in quel quarto d'ora magico dove voi non mi potevate sentire, in questo preciso momento mentre siamo in live il mio computer sta esportando la nuova puntata di Terra Sol Ring, quindi avrete presto, spero domani, volevo già farvelo uscire oggi, ma per problemi tecnici, ovvero che il mio computer non ha voluto collaborare, non sono riuscito a farvelo avere per oggi, ma proverò a persuaderlo. Adesso ho fatto vari accorgimenti e dovrebbe, si spera, farmi uscire un file pulito e non corrotto. Quindi domani, massimo giovedì, se tutto va bene, dovrebbe uscire la nuova puntata di Terrasoaring, dove giochiamo con i precostruiti di Ixalan. Avete già visto gli spoiler, grazie Sojobo, ciao. Avete già visto gli spoiler, i post di spoiler, diciamo, dell'evento, quindi sapete già quali sono gli ospiti, non sapete quali mazzi si giocano, nel senso sapete che si giocano i precostruiti, ma non sapete chi gioca che cosa. Non vi rivelo nulla perché voglio che sia una sorpresa, però anche qua è stata una roba che ci ha messo un po' di tempo, ma ci siamo. E in più, altra cosa, così ricapitoliamo molto velocemente, vi faccio infodump. A fine gennaio dovrei riuscire ad avere l'illustrazione per i tappetini ufficiali del Bazaar, e vi assicuro, ho visto le bozze, sono qualcosa di incredibile. E appena ho l'illustrazione la farò vedere sui social e diciamo che farò partire i preordini per poterli ordinare. Saranno pochi, farò una tiratura limitata perché è una cosa che sto provando a fare, ma diciamo che entro fine gennaio, se tutto va bene, dovremmo farcela. Quindi ho riassunto tutto. Vi chiedo, visto che ve l'ho chiesto prima ma ovviamente non mi avete risposto, voi siete in hype per Delitti Maniero Karlov? Io non vedo l'ora. È un set che penso dei set futuri, diciamo di quando ne ho presentato i set di quest'anno, era forse il set che più mi intrigava molto, probabilmente anche perché come dire, è Ravnica, e quindi per me Ravnica ha sempre un posto speciale nel mio cuore, ma l'idea dei murder mysteries e tutto mi piace tantissimo, quindi volevo sapere che cosa ne pensate voi, perché sì, la lore è interessantissima. Infatti farò ovviamente sia la guida alla pre-release che il che cosa succede in Delitti al Maniero Karlov appena mi arrivano i riassunti dal buon Zaxxon, anche perché sono curioso, non ho più tempo per leggere decentemente. Oh Maruccio, salve. Ah, vedi Loremon, vedi. Sì. Anch'io sto fremendo tantissimo, anche perché mi sembra molto carina l'idea di tutto, mettiamola così, l'idea di tutto. Sì, allora io sono molto affezionato al concetto di gilde, non gilde, tutto, però proprio il fatto che questa sia una Ravnica diversa mi intriga, e mi intriga anche parecchio, se devo essere onesto. Quindi vedremo. Nel frattempo ho deciso che accumulerò un po' di buste per farci una bella sbustata in live, quindi unirò Delitti al Maniero Karlov, Ravnica Remastered e basta, cioè tutto quello che riuscirò a recuperare di Delitti al Maniero Karlov, tutto ciò che riuscirò a recuperare di Ravnica Remastered, e magari ci facciamo una live come si deve, ben fatta, bella, tutta insieme. Devo vedere se riesco, perché in realtà dovrei dividere diciamo le cose sponsorizzate da Fantasia con le cose sponsorizzate da Wizards of the Coast, ma li vedremo, perché di Ravnica Remastered mi sta arrivando anche una collector booster, e quindi in più c'è la collector booster che mancava dal bundle di Ixalan, che me la mandano. Sì, esatto Loremon, cambia solo il punto di vista, esatto. Quindi fra 8 minuti si parte. 8 minuti. Io sto fremendo, non vedo l'ora, perché è Ravnica, è casa, c'è Krenko, che è notoriamente mio fratello, e quindi bello, è tutto bello. Io sono proprio contento, proprio contento di essere qua, sono contento di essere con voi, perché ragazzi, io ho passato una vita a lavorare durante i debutti e arrivare alla pausa cena a guardare freneticamente il telefono per vedere le carte nuove e perdermi questa esperienza con voi, che è un'esperienza che ho sempre voluto fare, proprio perché è bello poter condividere questo genere di cose. Io ho sempre adorato. Vediamo. Daniele, benvenuto. Ciao. Siamo qua, pronti. Io sono prontissimo e carichissimo. Sono carico. Tra l'altro, una cosa molto bella di questa nuova lente è che mette molto da vicino a fuoco, e quindi io posso anche mettervi davanti una carta molto vicina e guardate quanto mette bene a fuoco. Questa è una cosa che la vecchia lente non riusciva a fare. Giustissimo, bravissimo Sojobo. C'è anche un Discord, io sarò qua in live e non sarò sul Discord, ma per tutti quelli che vogliono c'è il server Discord, dove molti della community del Bazaar si stanno trovando per guardare insieme a me, ma commentare tra virgolette tra di loro a voce quello che succede nel debut. Sojobo, ti chiedo se riesci a mettere un link di invito. Dovresti riuscirci, perché io, se metto ancora aprire Discord una cosa e l'altra, mi esplode il computer semplicemente. In più io vi faccio vedere una cosa che ho comprato l'altro ieri. Mi metto di qua. Mi sono preso il libro di cucina ufficiale di Magic, perché l'ho visto in libreria, cioè, come fai a lasciarlo sullo scaffale? E non so se vi interessa che del contenuto su questa cosa, tipo se ne vale la pena comprarlo, o non lo so, eventualmente delle cose di cucina legate a Magic. Fatemelo poi sapere, perché potrebbe anche essere un'idea interessante. E quindi siamo qua. Tra l'altro mancano 4 minuti. Io direi di cambiare scena, perché qua secondo me si sta muovendo qualcosa. Vediamo un po'. Allora, no, chiudi questo, ok. Va bene, qua abbiamo la live in sottofondo. Io tra l'altro mi centro un pelo di più, così siamo più tranquilli. Allora, una cucina con crenco ci può stare anche perché la parte di Ravnica di questo ricettario si basa sul fatto che Jace chiede a Crenco di trovare una ricetta simbolica per ogni gilda ed è una cosa molto carina. Infatti, diciamo la parte, il capitolo riguardante Ravnica ha una ricetta per gilda più una ricetta esclusiva per Jace, che sono tutte molto carine e molto in flavor, diciamo, che è una cosa molto molto carina. Poi ci sono anche altri piani, c'è Kamigawa, Kaladesh, Dominaria e Innistrad. Poi c'è anche Ixalan, Teros, Kaldheim ed Eldraine. Quindi in realtà ci sono tante tante cose diverse. Tante cose diverse. Oh, Leonardo, quanto tempo, quanto tempo. Era da un po' che non ti beccavo in live. Cioè, che non beccavi me in live, più che altro. Vai tranquillo. Entra e esci pure quando vuoi. E dei video di cucina devo capire però come, perché cioè, non ho una cucina molto adatta a registrare video, quindi devo capire un attimino come fare. A lavoro non credo che mi permettano di farlo, mi sparerebbero. Una cosa che sono curioso e spero che funzioni è che tecnicamente potremmo avere l'audio per come ho impostato adesso la live, però adesso vedrò un attimo. È stato un periodo difficile, mi dispiace Leonardo, mi dispiace veramente tantissimo. A Teros vediamo che cosa c'è. Io so solo che a Ravnica c'è il Grulash che mi ha fatto molto ridere. Devo essere onesto, il Grulash mi ha fatto molto molto ridere. Allora, su Teros niente Gyros, mi dispiace. Ho controllato adesso nell'indice, niente Gyros. C'è la salsa divina di Xenagos però. Ho lo stufato finalmente a casa di Elspeth. Speravo ci fosse una sezione legata a Nuova Capenna dove ti insegnano a fare il nimbo. Sarebbe stato bello, un cocktail che fa il nimbo, sarebbe stato incredibile, l'avrei voluto tantissimo, invece non è successo. Ma va bene così. Adesso sono curioso di vedere se abbiamo audio dalla live, lo vedremo subito. Ma a vedere così credo proprio di no. Quindi io mi preparo un backup con questa cosa qua. Perché io ho paura che per quanto sia bellissimo fatto così, non... Allora, aggiungiamo un cattura schermo. No, nulla. Cattura finestra. Allora, ok, è già partito, ma adesso, molto bene. Qui allargo le cose perché il metodo che ho usato io non funziona. Ok, investiga per ogni avversario. Bella. Ok, Kaya. Quando una creatura controlli entra il campo. Put into exile, you may choose a creature card from among them. Ok, si dovrebbe sentire. No. Si sente? Vi chiedo. E Simic l'avevano detto. Velocissimo, velocissimo. Non si sente. Che... Il fatto è che... Ah... Perché non mi trova? Uh. Non so perché non ho il... Ok. Ok, ti permette di giocare le carte faccia in giù e pagando il costo... Ok. Ok, è come Morph. È un Morph che però è più forte di Morph. Costa uno in più, però è un 2-2 War 2. Intanto io cerco di capire...
Was summoned back to the scene of the crime at Karlov Manor. Teysa claimed to have something important to tell her, but by the time Kaya arrived, Teysa's body was already cold. Another murder. Kaya discovered a note written in Teysa's hand, but the script was Phyrexian. Was Teysa working for them? And could there be another murderer on the loose? With these unanswered questions spurring her on and a dead friend to put to rest, Kaya took on the case. Cases are a new mechanic that allow you to experience the different steps as a mystery unfolds, just as a detective would. Cases are quest-like enchantments with 3 abilities. The top ability is always active. The middle is a condition to solve the case, and the bottom a reward once you've solved it.
Ah, ho capito.
Back at the agency, Kaya and Kellen bumped into Agris Koss, who was one of Boros' best investigators when he was alive. Things hadn't changed much now that he's dead. Reluctantly assisting in the agency's investigation, he was prepared to catch any person suspected of foul play. Suspect is another new mechanic, which allows you to cast your well-honed detective eye at any creatures that looks like they might be up to no good. Suspected is a label that can be applied to a creature. A suspected creature has menace and can't block. Once suspected, a creature remains suspected until it leaves the battlefield or another effect causes it to no longer be suspected.
Ok, finché non lascia il campo di battaglia.
Beginning their investigation, went to speak to Judith of the Rakdos.
Roberto, salve.
Judith was present the night of the Karlov Manor party. Kaya was surprised she was even invited, and more surprised to learn that Judith had a disagreement with Teysa before her murder. Judith insisted that she was innocent, but did inform the detectives that they didn't have the whole story. She pointed them to the original guild pact at V2 and promised that it would clarify things. Meanwhile, Croft had decided to go about things a little differently.
I have a new and unlikely partner, Itrada. After all, who would be more motivated to clear her name? And it helps to have an assassin on my side as I untangle this thicket of clues and false leads.
Etrata and Alquist headed to the last place she
È
remembered being
comunque
before
sempre
waking up at the
bellissima,
party, one of her assassin-friendly hiding places.
Cioè,
They discovered a fine yellow-gray
Picture
powder
Poison,
dusting her
carina
bedside table and
come
pillowcase,
battuta.
their first major piece of evidence.
Sì,
Collect
Julie
evidence
bellina.
is another new mechanic. You can solve a mystery in your head, but nothing is as important as hard evidence when bringing the guilty to justice. To collect evidence, exile any number of cards from your graveyard with the total mana value of the indicated number or greater. Some cards even unlock alternative effects when entering the battlefield, if evidence was collected. As Alquist pondered the meaning of the powder, he was attacked by Massacre Girl, an infamous Rakdos assassin. Thanks to Etrata, Massacre Girl was sent
è
packing.
tornata!
But
Lo
who
sapevo.
would have hired
Lo
her
sapevo
to
che
kill
Massacre
Prof?
Girl aveva Wither.
And why?
Ah,
Kaya and Kellen headed
che
out into the
bella sta
wilderness,
foresta.
or as close as Ravnica gets to wilderness, to see the new literal
Brancio
resting place of
Vitugazzi, 3
Vitu-Ghazi as the
disguise
giant tree recovers from
Quando
the
è girato
battle with the
faccia su, scegli due
Phyrexians.
colori.
Kaya and Kellen
e-
were stopped in front of their destination by Tolsimir and
aggiungi
his
domani
wolf
due colori.
Boya. Tolsimir seemed standoffish
Mamma mia,
and on
Voya
edge,
sta diventando sempre più
almost as though
grossa.
he and his pointy-toothed companion had something to hide. But after a couple of tense moments, he agreed to lead our intrepid investigators inside Vitu-Ghazi. Trostani, the Dryad Guild Master of the Selesnya
È tornata
Conclave,
Trostani.
have roots that tangle with the living wood of Vitu-Ghazi,
Ah, già, è vero,
so
ci
that
sono
the two
tutti
seem
i
inextricable.
capi gilda.
Trostani was once 3 dryads, Sim representing harmony,
Detach,
Oba representing life,
Vigilance
and
e
Ses
Double
representing
Strike.
order. Now all are
Figo, questo è
united
un
with
bel
each other and
comandante
the
per
world tree.
Selesnya anche.
They pointed
Non
the
è un brutto
investigators
comandante,
towards the
è
guild pact
molto
they
intensivo a
sought.
livello di
The
mana, ma
investigators learned that the cult of Rakdos was
Rakdos?
founded
L'avevamo
and
già
bound
visto
to
Rakdos, tra
Rakdos in the
l'altro.
hope that it would prevent him from his practice of instilling murderous rage into random citizens. That sure sounds like what happened to Etrata.
infatti non ce lo fanno vedere perché l'hanno già visto.
Etrata and Alquist headed to see Kylox the inventor, hoping he might be able to shed
Kylox.
some light on the mysterious powder. Alquist
Attacca
had some
sacrifica
suspicions
qualsiasi numero
about
di
what that
creature.
substance had to do with
Esiglia
murders,
X,
and knew
dove
that
X
only an
istante
advanced
sorse-
scientific mind can help him
Oh,
get to the bottom of it. But when he and
Interessante,
Etrata
fai
arrived at
pedine, poi
Kylox's lab,
sacrifichi le
they found
pedine
it in
per
a
attivare
state
la
of
sua abilità.
turmoil.
Interessante.
Alquist combed through the ransacked lab for clues and discovered a secret disguised hatch that
Tra
led
l'altro,
underneath the
molto
lab.
interessante.
Kylox must have tried to escape. Alquist and Etrata followed the path only to find the missing Kylox working furiously in a secret office.
Questo caso è
Before they had a
molto
chance to
forte.
discuss the powder,
In,
a group of goblins broke in to capture the
Storm è
artificer.
fortissimo.
Alquist and Etrata were able to quickly hide from being taken themselves, but managed to follow the group to somewhere on Tin Street. They
Ehi, è
discovered
casa
that
mia
Krenko,
quella.
another suspect who
Krenko,
thought that
fratello
he
mio.
was the one in danger, was behind
Artefatti.
Kylox's kidnapping. Krenko believed that Kylox's secret
Forte.
research was the key to the recent
Strano, ma
spate of murders.
forte.
As if on cue, yet another brainwashed Ravnican made an attempt on Krenko's life. But his aim fell
Krenko
short, and
nuovo e
instead of Krenko,
interessante.
Kylox
Molto
was killed.
interessante.
We managed to rouse the murderer from his stupor. He was confused and horrified. He claimed to have been at the flower shop. And then suddenly here he was assassinating a scientist he had never even heard of.
Bella
Curious.
quest'art, incredibile.
At this point in the investigation,
Oh,
it was clear that
l'obitorio.
victims were piling up at an alarming rate. What had started as a search for Zagana's killer had now spiraled into something much more wide-ranging and insidious. Teysa and Kylox had both been murdered in cold blood, and there were more bodies to come. As Proft and Etrata were contemplating the scope of this case, across town, the agency informed Kaya and Kellen that Teysa's killer had been captured, a low-level hitman with no memory of the attack. And the bad news kept coming. Since she last
quindi
crossed
gli
paths
omicidi
with
non sanno,
Proft,
non si
Massacre Girl
ricordano
had
niente.
attempted to murder Aurelia, killing 10 of her soldiers in the process. Massacre Girl, echoing the other killers so far, said she didn't know
Bellissima
why
lei,
she attacked Aurelia.
bellissima.
Aurelia would not accept this answer. She gave Kaya and Kellen 24 hours to solve the case, or she'd march the Legion to war against the cult of
credo
Rakdos,
più più
almost
uno.
certainly plunging Ravnica back into chaos. They were so close
Forte.
to finding the truth. But
Questa
now
è
the
forte.
pressure was on.
War Leader's Call è una bella carta, ragazzi.
Elsewhere, Proft and Etrata were in Golgari territory in the Undercity, hunting down Izoni.
Aizoni.
Proft had noticed her spiders in Etrata's cell, and again in Kylox's underground lab. Clearly, Izoni was keeping tabs on the case. But why?
Non mi fa
Once
impazzire
found,
questa.
Izoni
La
denied
trovo un
any
po' un
wrongdoing,
mattone.
but was able to confirm for them what Kylox could not. Whatever the power
Izoni è
they
un po' un
found is,
mattone.
it is not from Ravnica.
Ah, l'assassino non è di Ravnica.
I know who the killer is. Obvious, really, when you think about it. I'll reveal all in front of a group of interested parties, including the culprit. You'll just have to join me at Vitu-Ghazi to learn the truth.
So, given what we know, who has Proft identified as the killer? Who had the motive and the means? Teysa hosted the party during which the first murder occurred. She could have let in the killer, but she ended up a victim herself, and she appears to have had something to hide about the Phyrexian
Interessante che gira
invasion.
sulle clou.
While she might have been involved somehow, we can rule her out as the main culprit. Etrata was clearly the one who murdered Zagana, but at the same time, she had no memory of the event itself. And she assisted Proft in gathering further clues. Is she the murderer, playing a long and complicated
Quindi
game,
qualcuno che
or just
controlla
a
la
murder
mente.
weapon? Judith had her own quarrel with Teysa, though she claims it was minor. But she also knew about the guild pact with Rakdos. Is it possible she's involved in the murders, or does she have her own cunning plan? Massacre Girl is, as the name
Comunque
implies, a
bellissime
known
le
killer.
illustrazioni,
She not only attempted to knock
progetto
off
sono
Alquist
bellissime.
Proft, but also attacked Aurelia. Is she,
Il
like
progetto,
Etrata,
scusate,
an
le
unwitting
dossier.
pawn for someone else? Or is
Il
something
frame
more
dossier lo trovo
sinister
veramente
going on
carino.
beneath that not-so-innocent smile? Kylox felt threatened for the secret projects he was working on, but didn't reveal what those were while he was alive. Is it possible it had something to do with the powder that Proft found? Either way, his death rules him out as a suspect. Krenko was convinced he was next on the murderer's hit list, and he was attacked by one of the brainwashed assailants. But they ended up killing the very scientist Krenko had just had kidnapped. Is it possible that he was behind the murders and used the attack on himself to dispose of an enemy and waylay suspicion? Massacre Girl's attack on Aurelia gave her the perfect pretext to launch
Aurelia è
an
una bella
all-out
carta,
war.
comunque.
But what if she was the one helping the murders along in order to establish a call for war that no one could question? Still,
Aurelia?
it seems
quello che
unlikely
abbiamo
that
visto prima,
such a
l'angelo.
righteous figure would be so underhanded as to stoop to murder. Agris was a beacon of justice in his life, but called back into the service by the Boros Legion, he disappeared without telling anyone his intentions. Could he be hiding something? Agris had no motive. He was only aiding in the
Okay.
investigation. A ghost just looking to retire. He was clearly not involved.
No,
We can rule
niente
him out.
cosplay di
Could
Krenko.
Trostani be involved? They seem innocent, but their
È
guild has
bella
been through
questa
much turmoil
versione.
as a result of
È
the Phyrexian invasion.
bellissima.
Could it have
piace
unbalanced
da
the Dryads
morire
in some
questa
way,
versione di Trostani,
turning a
l'avevo
healthy
notata
tree into
prima.
something twisted and gnarled
È
beyond
proprio
recognition?
bella.
And even if they didn't act directly, they are connected to another of our suspects. Several of the
Bello
mesmerized
Tolkien,
Ravnican
queste
assailants
le
had
illustrazioni della
vestiges
versione
of fur
dossier
on their
sono
robes.
incredibili.
A possible sign that they were working for Tolsimir and his mount, the Great Wolf Voya? Izoni had eyes on each phase of the
Bella anche
investigation.
Izoni.
Etrata's cell,
Peccato che
Kylox's
sia una
lab.
carta
Was she
brutta.
just keeping tabs like she said, or trying to remain one step ahead of an investigation she knew would lead to her? Or perhaps we should look more closely at the great detective at the center of this web. He has been at almost every crime scene, and this murder spree has burnished his
interessante.
reputation. Is
Come la
he
stanno
working
mettendo?
both sides of this case?
This case was a tricky one. It seemed easy to solve at first. Of course, Etrata killed Zagana. We practically caught her red-handed. I witnessed Kylox's death, but the attacker surrendered without a fight. Someone had to be pulling the strings all along. So I called everyone here because I knew that the perpetrator was among you, and that they wouldn't be able to resist taking me out before I exposed them. As I had hoped, while speaking with Kaya moments ago, a
Transizioni
flower
di
grew
questo
from
video
the
sono
wall and attempted to
incredibili.
dose her with what appears to be mind
Davvero?
control pollen, triggering my demise. Thanks to Izoni's help, we knew that this powder was not something we've ever seen here. This was the final piece of evidence I needed. The killer is none other than Oba, the central member of Trostani. Only Trastani has the power to create a new form of life like this. Any plant in the city was able to be used as a delivery system for the pollen. So, that's the method and the means. As for motive, each of the people Trastani killed or tried to kill was involved with the Phyrexian invasion. Teysa was communicating with them, though I'm told she was actually acting as a double agent for the benefit of Ravnica. Krenko profited off the war, and Zagana was experimenting with Phyrexian oil. No one was more damaged by the Phyrexian invasion than Trastani, emissaries of all living things on this plane. And so, no one had a motive for murder like them.
Esatto, Roberto, sì.
So there we have it. Oba, the central member of Trostani, was behind the plot, and Alquist Proft, with our help, managed to put the pieces together. But the larger mystery has just begun. There are so many more puzzles to solve and secrets to uncover with Murders at Karlov Manor. Your eye to detail and detective skills are still needed. In addition to playing the new set, there are 12 puzzles and one meta puzzle to solve. You can find your first puzzle in the pre-release kit and then discover more in products like Play Boosters and the bundle. Go to ravnicadetectiveagency.com for more puzzles and the final meta puzzle.
Interessante.
And if you feel like attending a party less deadly than the one at Karlov Manor, you can play early at your local game store for pre-release starting the weekend of February 2nd, on Arena February 6th, and available everywhere February 9th. If you want even more tantalizing clues and details about the Murders at Karlov Manor, story episodes are currently rolling out. Keep a sharp eye out for any further clues, detectives. Ravnica is still counting on you to solve the remaining puzzles.
Ok, carino. Le meccaniche sono interessanti, simpatiche. Che dire? Non male. Non male, mi è piaciuto. Adesso vediamo il Weekly MTG insieme. Visto che tra poco parte, a sto punto aspettiamo.
Hello and welcome to the absolute
Che ci
best
saranno
place
altre
to be
cose in
if you
più.
want to learn more about Murders at Karlov Manor. You just saw an introduction to the set. We learned a little bit about the mechanics. Saw some cool cards, some reprints, some new cards, some pretty cool treatments.
Ma neanche più lo sfondo. È tutto nero adesso. Prima c'erano gli sfondini carini. Adesso neanche più quello. Sono 3 poltrone in una stanza asettica.
We're going to talk more about that puzzle that's built into the set,
come cosa.
which is really cool. We're going to reveal every special guest in the set, and we are also going to talk about
tutte le special guest.
Ravnica Cluedo edition later in the show. But first,
Cluedo è una cosa proprio mi intriga zero, se devo essere onesto.
You know these guys. Mike Turian and Mark Rosewater are here to talk about the set. What were your roles, real quick, with the set?
So for Murders at Karlov Manor, I was the product designer, which I've been for a number of sets, The Lord of the Rings, Wilds of Eldraine. So yeah, I was super excited to help bring MKM to life. The Clue version
Continua
to life,
ad ammazzarmi il fatto che il set abbia come codice MKM, creerà una confusione incredibile.
So
who we'll hear from later.
Yeah, we'll hear from him later too. And it's just been a blast bringing another amazing Magic.
Però vi ricordate le vecchie presentazioni, quelle tutte con i set belli, con gli attori, la gente che intervistava? Quelle erano delle belle presentazioni, perché non le fanno più? Cioè, va bene, ok, i soldi sono quelli che sono, ma cavoli, erano proprio delle belle presentazioni.
So if you're here for preview cards, we got you. We're going to have plenty of them. So we're going to kick off with kind of the biggest marquee mechanic of the set, which is disguise and cloaks. We've got some preview cards, but Mark, why don't you talk real quick about what disguise and cloak are?
Okay, so when we first said we're doing a murder mystery, we said, well, from a mechanical standpoint, what do we need to do? Well, we need to have a mystery, right? You need to figure something out. That's the key to a murder mystery. So we went and said, well, are there mechanics that already exist where you have to solve something? And we talked a lot about there's hidden information, but like being in your hand didn't quite get the feel we want, because like you have to know you don't know something.
Yeah.
And so Morph was kind of a low-hanging fruit, if you will, that, it's a very popular mechanic introduced during Onslaught, was in Time Spiral, was in Concept here. And so we thought maybe we wanted to bring Morph back, but one of the ongoing conversations is when we made Morph way back during Onslaught, creatures were just a lot weaker than they are now.
Yeah.
That, when Magic first got made, the spells were very strong and the creatures were kind of weak. And over the years, we've made the spells not quite as strong and the creatures a little stronger. So 3 mana for a 2/2, because Morph, you can play a face-down 2/2 creature, vanilla creature for 3. It's a little on the weak side. So what we've said is, okay, during Concept here, we did some exploration. We tried what we called
Sì, è vero, Rosewater è la voce più riconoscibile di questo mondo. Bellissimo, sì.
We tried something we called Smorf, which was for 4 mana, you played a 2/2 with a +1/+1 counter. So it's like for 3/3.
Yeah.
That sort of morphed into Megamorph.
Yeah.
We didn't quite end up with what we wanted, but when we started this time, like, okay, let's do more exploration. So the first thing we tried was 3 mana for a 3/2. The problem there was it was a little too aggressive, and you never tended to flip them up. You never turned them up because they were just too good at killing things.
Yeah.
And so we said, okay, what we really wanted was a mechanic that kept you from killing them so you could flip them up. That one of the fun parts about Morph is getting to turn them up.
Yeah.
And so what we found was we put Ward on them. So we ended up putting Ward
hanno aggiunto Ward
so
sui
Disguise
Morph.
is Morph, but Morph with the added benefit of it's a 2/2 face-down creature with Ward 2.
Yeah.
And what we found is Ward 2 did a really good job of making you not kill the face-down creatures, so you get the opportunity to turn them face up. Now, for those longtime players, we kept the rule. There's a rule we call the Morph rule, where it's not till 5 mana that you can flip things up, so you know that you won't lose a creature to a Morph creature till they have 5 mana. That
Sure.
it can't. If it's less than 5 mana, it'll trade. So you're aware of that. We kept that rule. And then basically what we did is we called it Disguise. And then what Cloak is we did Manifest back in Concept here, did Morph. We did Manifest. Manifest just means you take a card from the top of your library, put it on the battlefield as a face down 2/2,
Yep.
and then you can turn it up if it's a creature. Cloak basically is like Manifest, although it can come from other zones. It doesn't have to come from the library. But you put it face down, but as a 2/2 with Ward 2, so that matches with Disguise.
Yep.
So Disguise is just upgraded Morph, and Cloak is sort of upgraded Manifest.
Ok, quindi
it just was the perfect fit for a murder mystery set.
Ci sta.
Like, who's this mystery thing? Aha, it's this person.
E può essere che una volta che rendono minimo utile con Ward 2.
It wasn't the very first thing we added. I'll get to that in a second. But it was the second thing we added to the set. And it just seemed like a clean, perfect fit. And I will say, I do think it's a slightly better Morph. And the reason we changed it, the reason it's not just Morph, is this guy just plays a little bit better.
Yeah. So let's see some examples of Morph.
Ok, nuove carte.
Disguise and
Un
Cloak.
Moroi! Un Moroi!
These show some of the flavors of what you can do with the mechanic.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's always been true about Morph is that one of the fun
fa
things is
schifo
I
come
play
quello
a creature,
vecchio,
it has
sì.
some value at 3 mana, no matter what it costs, at 3 mana, hey, I get a 2/2, and 2/2 with War 2. So I have a creature that I can use, but later in the game, often, I can turn into something bigger. Now, maybe the creature naturally is bigger. Maybe the creature has an effect when you turn it face up. There's a lot of different things you can do with it. And we're sort of showing all the different kinds of stuff. But that's one of the things that's great about this kind of mechanic is it is super interactive. There's a lot of design space. There's a lot of really cool cards we can make. And you get a lot of really fun reveal moments, which exactly plays into the trope space we want. Where, haha, it's this.
Capisco, Roberto, capisco.
And that Morph rule that you were referring to earlier, for anyone who doesn't recognize that. So you'll notice that the 2 cards that have Disguise here, that Disguise for 2 mana, so you can turn them up for 2 mana, both have 2 toughness.
Right, they'll trade. What the 5 rule is if I attack into a 2/2 and they morph it and they don't have 5 mana, I know I won't lose they won't save their creature and I lose my creature.
Yeah.
They might bounce, we might trade, but at least I know that if they don't have 5 mana, I'm not just having it swallowed up by their creature.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, and that's an important rule we kept it, even though Morph became Disguise, the rule still kept, the 5 rule still stayed.
And then one of the things I love here about Atrata, right, is like you were talking about Morph, you were talking about Manifest, and she works with she works with all of them.
Right, it's face down. So
Right, it's face down. Of course, you know, she's a combo with herself. Right, but then like as you go back and you go and find some of your decks that have those mechanics in them, like she's a perfect addition, as well as of course being an assassin to boost up assassins as well.
Sì, tratta interessante. Anche questa devi spenderci un botto di mana sopra, ma carina. Rubare le cose agli avversari è sempre divertente.
We'll get to Ravnica later. Yep. There was a comment in chat that I think leads perfectly into our next slide, which is the confusion about if you have morph and disguise in the same deck, which will exist, which we'll talk about later. But we have this helper token right here, a mysterious creature. So this is whenever you have a disguised creature.
Ok, carina come
cosa. And the
cosa.
morph overlays exist from Cons of Tarkir as well.
Sì, quindi non ci si può confondere.
Those do exist to help keep these things straight. And then, you know, I also saw a comment about questions about the limited archetypes, and there are limited archetypes that care about face-down creatures, which is what our next card is. So talk a little bit about this. White-green cares about disguise and
Face-down permanent, control, ok, metti un +1 su di esso sulla sentinella. Interessante, carina come design, mi piace. Quindi bianco-verde cosa faccia in giù? Buono a sapersi. Selesnia è roba faccia in giù.
The gold showcase signpost uncommon.
Yep.
Yeah, and so it sort of, the uncommon says, hey, if you're playing these colors, here's what you want to do. And so white is the most aggressive color, and so it really likes face down because it can be very aggressive with its things. Green is the color that has the biggest creatures, and so morph is nice in that you can play big things early. And so anyway, just white-green made a lot of sense for being the place to stick that mechanically.
Yeah, and I believe, I know Adam Styborski and myself wrote a collecting article that has a product overview, and I believe in there, I'm 99% sure, it shows all 10 draft archetypes. Right, and so you can sort of go and check that out on Daily MTG, and you'll see like, okay, this is what white-green's about, this is what red-black's about, etc. And they all have such fun names because it's murder mystery set. I really enjoy the names they gave the archetypes.
Also, let me ask you a question real quickly,
yeah.
Which I'm sure will come up. So obviously, when you mix morph with disguise, I mean, you have to now track them.
Yep.
One of the things people ask me is like, well, morph works. Why would you change morph? And the answer is, we don't like the future to be victim to the past, right? Like, we made something, and when we made Onslaught, morph made sense, but Magic has changed, and so just because Magic, you know, we have to adapt with the times, we have to change with the times.
Ha senso che vogliano adattare le vecchie meccaniche ad adesso, ci sta. Magic è cambiato e le meccaniche sono diverse, il power level è diverso, ci sta.
All right, one of the other big flavor home runs, obvious inclusions for a mechanic that it was so obvious we introduced it back at the first look, is Investigate. Which is
so I said before that morph was the second thing we did.
Yeah.
Literally, the very first day, we write down all the tropes, and one of the questions we ask is, are there mechanics we want to bring back? And Investigate is such the slam dunk in Murder Mystery
era proprio un'inclusione per forza, cioè non potevano non metterla, non potevano.
We were doing cosmic horror, and a big part of cosmic horror is it starts with a mystery. And so we put Jace in a trench coat, and so that's where we introduced Investigate. Anyway, it was obvious from day one. How do you do Murder Mystery World and not have Investigate and clues? So it was literally the absolute first thing we put in the set. Everybody assumed it'd be in the set. That's why you showed it in the first look. Like, why wouldn't it be? So, but the one thing we can show some cards. We did some fun stuff with it because we're ever evolving. But anyway, it makes perfect sense. The reason we made Investigate in the first place, real quickly, is we wanted to draw cards, but it turned out that drawing cards is really good. And so Investigate came about because we said, how do you draw half a card? That's where it came from. And the idea of, I'll make a token, and the token with mana draws me a card is a way to make cards, but it's not quite a full card.
Yeah.
And anyway, the clues were so popular, it led us down this path where we did treasure and food and blood and all sorts of other things. And so the idea of artifact tokens in volume as a mechanical component clues really were the thing that led us down that path. So anyway, clues are back.
Clues are back. Let's see some cards. So the first cards we're going to show, we showed these at first look, so these are not new cards. But we wanted to show some cards that, you know, they investigate when you cast them, when they enter the battlefield. Alquist Proft, obviously one of the stars of this set, can do some stuff. By do some stuff I mean cast Sphinx's Revelation.
Sì, che il fatto che investighi non è tutta sta roba, la cosa forte è perché devi sacrificare la clue per fare Sphinx's Revelation, però non lo so. Sì, è autosufficiente, però non lo so, questa cosa che fa la clue quando entra.
So galvanize, it says if you've drawn 2 or more cards. Clues are a great way to draw 2 or more cards. Crime Novelist says if you sacrifice an artifact.
Ok.
Public Thoroughfare. You can tap an artifact. We've seen that effect before, but this is a twist on it.
Il Crime Novelist potrebbe essere una carta rotta. Sacrifichi artefatto, quindi sacrifichi tesoro, fai +1/+1 su Novelist e aggiungi un mana rosso. Oh mio Dio, è una roba fortissima. Ma che cavoli.
There was a little bit, but it was mostly you were drawing cards. And in this set, yes, you can still draw cards, but we also give you other tools and other ways to make use of them. And that the more we've done these artifact tokens, the more we realize that, hey, it's kind of valuable to give you different options and have different draft strategies, use them in different ways.
Dire?
Yep, and to the point of different tokens, like these are obviously meant within the set to work with clues. But fans are pointing out that, you know, treasures work pretty well with crime novelists as well. Yeah, that sort of deal.
I just want to read the book that the crime novelist is reading. It seems like a Goblin Bard.
Goblin Bard is a great type line. It's, you know, and are they writing about the crime that happened in Ravnica? Or are they writing about something else? I don't know.
Yeah, right. We'll have to wait. Maybe one day.
That'll be its own set one day.
I suspect that no, I'm not, that's the one pun. I didn't even finish it, but we're going to move on to talk about Suspect, which is one of the new mechanics in this set.
Suspect.
And we've already shown Argus Cost was in the debut, so we can put that slide up. And then Mark, talk a little bit about what Suspect is and how it plays in the set.
So one of the things, there's a larger thing to handle. I'll talk a little bit about design as a whole, and then we'll get into the Suspect specifically. One of the things that we're always on the look for is how to improve the resonance of design, how to make things even more evocative. And so something we've really started doing, this set is where we did it in force.
Comunque, nel senso, sospettare non è nemmeno più così male, in realtà. La fai diventare più forte in attacco. Non è male, non può bloccare, vabbè, ma se la butti tipo un 5-5, gli dai minacciare non può bloccare, non è niente male.
And so Suspect's a really good example. We loved the idea of a suspect in a murder mystery story. It's really important, right? There's a victim, someone usually dies. There's a culprit, but we don't know who that is. And then most everybody is a suspect. And so we wanted to bring a way to make you the suspect. And we actually, my article that goes up, I think later today, I give a lot of examples, or sorry, next week's article does this, gives a lot of examples of the different ways we tried with suspect. In the end, what we realized was we wanted it to be something that had both a positive to it and a negative to it, so that sometimes you'd want to put on your creatures, sometimes you'd make your creature suspects, but sometimes you'd want to make your opponent's creature suspects.
Sì, esatto, è flessibile perché puoi darla alle tue o puoi darla a quelle degli avversari in base a quanto ti serve avere il campo aperto sull'avversario o sul avere una cattura con minacciare. È interessante, una meccanica simpatica.
And so we gave it menace. We're like, well, I don't want to block you alone because, you know, you might kill me, so I'm not going to block you alone. And then from a gameplay standpoint, we added that with can't block. So the idea, one of the big things about design is you want the game to end. And so you want to make mechanics that sort of push inertia to make the game end. And the reason I like Suspect a lot is when you suspect something, if you put it on your creatures, it encourages you to attack because your creatures can't block anyway, and they got menace. And if you put it on your opponent's creatures, it encourages you to attack because they can't block. So
è una meccanica molto aggressiva.
It had a lot of flavor to it, and just helped make the game end, which is always good in design.
Yeah, and Mike,
molto bello.
I know you're about to say something, but I am getting a bunch of questions in chat about how can we tell that a character is suspected? So what did you all put together to make sure?
Yeah, so I mean, much like there was the mysterious creature helper card, we have a suspected counter, and you can get these in the play boosters.
Carino il counter, il segnalino sospetto con il signore incognito dei browser.
Here upcoming, but you'll have this suspected counter, and you put it on top of the creature. I mean, I know we're seeing it large here, but when you see it on the creature, and I think on the video too, it showed that it's a pretty nice size to indicate, and also with a fun little graphic to go along with it, enjoyable itself. If we go back to the previous slide, one of the things I love about the set is not only did that rules text start out really, striving for, okay, how are we going to do suspect? How are we, like the whole set, it just brings it together with card names like Airtight Alibi, and it doesn't add up, right? Like, to me, that shows how, starting with the rules text that's really going for that murder mystery feel, just continues throughout the art and the names as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's when you think of Airtight Alibi, you think of, well, they're no longer a suspect, and that's exactly what the card does.
Yeah, one of the things we tend to do in top-down sets is we'll have the creative team make evocative names very early on, and then we'll directly design cards exactly to match the names.
Ok, ha detto che qua sono, essendo un set top-down, hanno prima pensato ai nomi delle carte e poi creato le carte per stare dietro ai nomi.
And so, because it's a keyword action, we can use it in a lot of different ways, so it's very flexible.
And we saw in Argus Cost there are ways that there are going to be cards that interact with suspects in different ways and have them do different things.
Tipo ci saranno carte che interagiranno, ok.
All right, let's move on to the next mechanic, which is it's really a cost, but it's pretty evocative as well, which is collect evidence. And even though all three of these cards are green, let's point out, it's not just a green mechanic. It just happened to be sort of, we wanted a spread of things, and it all ended up in green. So, Mark, tell us about collect evidence.
So once again, we
really
like
the
the idea
è
of just being able to say
non
collect
forte,
evidence on
ma
cards.
interessante.
And so what we did is we said, okay, what could you collect?
Perché evidenzotto
we
è
went, in your hand,
parecchio.
you can collect cards. On the battlefield, you can collect permanents or counters, and maybe you, the player, collect counters. But in the end, the reason we focus on the graveyard is when a
Comunque, Vito Gazzi Inspector ha uno
there's two things you're
scoiattolo qua sulla
investigating. One is a
spalla ed è
murder,
una cosa
so that thing,
bellissima.
that's in the graveyard, and the past. And the graveyard also represents the past. And so there's something just very evocative about going to the graveyard as a means to do it. And from a mechanical sense, it's also nice because the graveyard is something that grows with time. So it kind of gets gated in a natural way, which is sort of cool. So that, and the idea was, we talked about whether we wanted to keep what was in the graveyard or to use the graveyard. And we found that using the graveyard was the best.
Detta semplice, è potenziamento con extra step, che è una battuta vecchia dell'ordine, no, forse era del prof, che tutte le abilità sono potenziamento con extra step. Questo è letteralmente potenziamento con extra step. E potevano mettere tipo kicker, esilia carte con mana totali tot.
But it's a cost, so there's other places you can use it. As a cost, you have to remove that many mana value worth of cards. And you're allowed to go over if you need to, but you have to be at least that amount. So collect evidence 6 means remove cards that are at least 6. It can be more if it has to be.
Non lo so, ho messa tanto di
We don't have
kicker.
one on the screen right now. These are all very similar to just additional costs.
Yeah.
But collect evidence is used in a few other ways. We saw one in the debut where a creature had ward collect evidence for. So there, that sort of different flavor to it.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways you can use. In fact, I have my teaser for not today's column, but next week's column. I have a collect evidence 10 card coming, and what collect evidence 10? Well, it's pretty exciting. Obviously, the novel allows us to do sort of big things, and so we can make big swings. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways you collect evidence because it's a cost.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, and then the last mechanic we're going to talk about was touched on briefly in the debut video, which are cases.
I casi. I casi sono un'idea interessante, mi piace.
Yeah, so the way cases worked, This is something we've been actually trying to do for a while, since original Zendikar.
Quindi la prima parte è un incantesimo e basta, la seconda parte sono le cose che devi fare per risolverlo e la terza parte sono quando l'hai risolto ottiene anche quella cosa, che a grandi linee era il design che avevo pensato io per le battaglie, un qualcosa di simile.
So we played in the space a lot. We sort of streamlined it. So the way it works is there's three components. One is that there's something you have to solve, right? The idea is, we love the idea of Case of the Blankety Blank.
Yep.
That's a trope of detective stories.
Yep.
And we wanted to call cards that. So we knew it wanted to be an enchantment because it's a non-tangible thing. That's what enchantments do well. If it's tangible, it'll be an artifact. But this
Quindi qua è una cosa che potenzia i detective e quando hai 3 o più detective, quando fai token crei anche una clue in aggiunta.
There's a reward. Once you've solved it, then you get a reward. It could be an effect that just goes off. It could be like an enchantment-like effect. You just get some reward. But then, from a game design standpoint, the first thing, you get something when you play it because it's just too much to like not get something. It's just, you're not going to put the card in your deck. And so basically there's 3 parts. Part number 1 is you get something when you play it that's worth a decent amount of the card, enough that's worth playing.
Yeah.
Then you get something to solve, and that's a quest for you to go on. And then, when you solved it, then you get your reward. And so it gets the word solved on the card, gets the word case on the card. So there's a lot. You can see we're trying really hard to get a lot of evocative words through the mechanics.
È carina come meccanica, mi piace come carta. I casi mi piacciono.
Once again, we wanted to have something to indicate, hey, when it is solved, just so that way, because you're getting,
c'è il segnalino, certo, giustamente, altrimenti ti dimentichi di averlo risolto.
But then when you solve it, you get the additional bonus as well, and in that way, it's pretty clear that, what state the card's in.
Ormai i segnalini sono la cosa più comune in Magic, cioè sono segnalini per 1000 cose diverse.
One of the challenges is when we make different cards, how to lay them out is interesting. We obviously, this sort of followed in, I think, how we did classes, where it's a saga reverse, meaning it's laid out like a saga, but instead of being the art being on the right side and being on the left, we've reversed it a little bit. So what we found when we have sequential cards, when you're sort of doing something along the way, the verticalness does a great job of showing sequentiality, and so that's why it looks like this.
Ok.
Yeah. And then just for the people, there are rare cases. I know we're looking at an uncommon.
Yep.
But there are rare cases.
Ci saranno casi rari.
Those won't be in the extended art variant because
much like we've done with sagas.
Much like we've done with sagas, just because it does, with the layout we have.
Sì, non le faranno full art perché non funzionano con il layout delle saghe.
Bit of the show, which is talking about booster fun, and we are actually going to start with extended. We of course have extended art cards in this set. The eagle-eyed in chat may have noticed at the end of the video that there was some art. It said Assassin's Trophy. That's our next card.
Ristampona! Ristampona Assassin's Trophy. Era ora che la ristampassero. Carina anche come illustrazione, preferisco l'originale se devo essere onesto, ma molto bene che hanno ristampato Assassin's Trophy. Contentissimo.
Zhuzh up your deck, as it were. And so we do this extended art version. We also do it for the commander content. There's extended art rares and mythics of
sì, che il problema è che le extended art sono brutte. Lo so che ce le date per Commander, ma sono un po' più, penso, il trattamento più brutto che esista l'extended art. Mannaggia. Almeno stavolta le stanno facendo tra virgolette bene, perché si vede che c'è un po' più di illustrazione e non è solo illustrazione zoomata, il che è un'ottima cosa, però non lo so, non mi sono mai...
Well, I mean, a couple things happened. One is standard went from 2 years to 3 years, which just raised the bar a little bit for the power level of standard. And
Che ristamperanno bombette perché tanto standard dura di più, quindi è più forte come formato. Ma cioè, meglio perché vuol dire che ristamperanno anche cose più interessanti in standard d'ora in poi, il che è ottima cosa, diciamocelo proprio così. Fuori dai denti. Non dobbiamo aspettare i master o comunque siete ausiliari per questa cosa.
It evokes very specific cards. Like there's definitely things that when people think of Ravnica, there's very specific things they think of, and that's kind of fun that we can go back and do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a great place for us to talk about why Ravnica, because you were saying before the show that this set wasn't initially designed as a Ravnica set.
So when we started,
Non doveva essere
we were going to do
inizialmente
Murder Mystery
Ravnica.
World. That was the plan. We were going to do Murder Mystery World.
A brand new world.
Brand new world. Like,
volevo fare un piano
we'll
nuovo.
optimize the world. Like a lot of times when we do top down, we're like, we're going to make a world that's this world, you know, we can make every decision to make this, you know, like it's a world where murders are happening constantly and people are solving it, whatever. And what we realized was, first thing we realized is it kind of had to have a city, that just murder mysteries require a certain amount of structure to them. And it needed to have like law, like the law, like there needed to be
Sì, cioè, serve della legge, delle istituzioni, una certa struttura sociale.
Yeah.
Right? And that, like, there's other places where the murder mystery wouldn't make as much sense. And so we started building it. It needed to have a city. It needed to have sort of a structured law thing. And the more we built it, the more we're like, wow, this really seems like Ravnica. And then one day we had this conversation, we're like, maybe it just wants to be Ravnica. Because one of the problems with building a new world for a murder mystery is nothing meant anything.
Yeah.
Like somebody got murdered. Who's this person? We've never met them before, but they got murdered, you know, and that we realized if we moved to Ravnica, like the murder victim could be someone you know. It's not just nobody, it's somebody that, you know, like...
And the murderer could be somebody
and the murderer could be someone you know, right? So one of the things that was really, like, when the story started and Zagana was, spoiler I guess, Zagana got murdered, people wrote to me, they go, I can't believe, that's Zagana! Like, it meant something to them. And so, the reason we ended up,
Hanno deciso poi di fare Ravnica perché era molto simile a quello che stavano già facendo e praticamente il fatto che avere dei personaggi familiari, un posto familiare rendeva la cosa migliore secondo loro, ci sta, sono d'accordo.
When we already made a world.
Yeah.
And to answer a question that people ask me, why not Capenna? Why not New Capenna, right?
Yeah.
New Capenna, it has a 20s vibe, film noir, like that. There's a lot of mystery tied to film noir.
Yep.
The problem was New Capenna, like, I mean, I guess there is a legal system in some sense, but a world in which people are just constantly killed because, you know, there's mobsters, like, it didn't quite have the vibe we needed.
Yeah.
Like, we needed the law to be a little more firm. And so Ravnica just made more sense than New Capenna.
Hanno pensato anche a New Capenna, ma non aveva senso perché non c'è una vera e propria polizia, non c'è un sistema giudiziario in Nuova Capenna.
Like we were trying to stay off of Ravnica. That was the problem we started running into. Is like we're like, okay, well let's.
Fiora sarebbe stato interessantissimo, è vero.
Step on the toes of Ravnica. Like, what are we doing? Like, oh, just make it Ravnica. So we made it Ravnica.
Well, and then I also really like that, you know, talking about Ravnica. Like we just had Ravnica remastered, right? Released recently, and so for the fans, they were like, oh, I want the the guild mechanics and that gameplay. Right, it's just like great. We'll have that set out, so that way you can be like nearly all of the mechanics that you love from all of the Ravnica sets. But then here we could really dive into the murder mystery trope and introduce new mechanics that, you know, worked better for a murder mystery world.
Right.
So that way you could sort of get the best of both by playing both sets.
And a little side note, this is a behind the scenes thing. One of the things we were worried about when we made it Ravnica was like, oh, but we're not giving you Ravnica mechanically as you know it. And the Ravnica Remastered just happened to be right there on the schedule. Like, we didn't plan it. That wasn't on...
non era pianificato che fossero una fianco all'altra.
We should just do this because, you know, right before the set comes out, we give you the guild experience of Ravnica.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Worked out.
Absolutely. All right. Let's now zoom in. I said there were going to be no more of those, but we're going to zoom in on more booster fun looks. And our next one is the magnified look. So we
che sono per i momenti chiave per le story spotlight.
Exile target attacking creature for 1 and a white. But Mike, talk a little bit about that treatment there on the right.
Yeah, so one of the things we wanted to do was, once again, with Booster Fund, we always go, we say, hey, what is this set about? How can we really tap into the resonance? Mark's talked about it from the gameplay standpoint, but then also from the aesthetic standpoint as well.
Yeah.
And so you can see here, it's sort of, it really is taking a look through a magnifying glass. And a couple things that I really love that were done here. One, it's just, these are all story moments.
Yep.
Right? So all the showcase magnified cards, they're all spells, instant sorceries. And so
sono tutti
they all
spell.
reflect like a moment, a beat in the story, and you can see that mtgstory.com in the bottom where you can go and read about it. But so therefore it gives you a sort of a second look, right? Of, here it is, here's this moment from a little bit of a different angle with a different perspective. You can even see that there's 2 unique pieces of flavor text, right? Giving that extra perspective.
Ok, vogliono dare una prospettiva diversa a questi momenti chiave, ok.
As a murder mystery, as a detective, like what is taking a closer look, and we've gone with this showcase magnified cards treatment.
Interessante.
All right, next up, and there is another sort of meta treatment that is on creatures. We're going to talk about that in a second. We're going to look at the promos coming up. You've seen some of these, but not all of them. So these are the 5 cards that you
Letting
can get
Helix,
in
interessante.
promo packs, and
No More
we've got
Lies, un
some
counter.
No More Lies speaks to my heart, as does Lightning Helix.
Che
We've got some pretty
esilia,
powerful cards in
interessante.
this bunch here.
Crowd Repair, Enters the Battlefield, Destroy Target Token, non pone control, quindi ETB spacca artefatto, token, spacca token, Last Goodbye, distrugge creatura Planeswalker, e il draghetto l'avevamo già visto.
Commander, other formats, right? And so you see there, a long-time staple, Lightning Helix, really
Cada
embodies
sacrifici
that.
artefatto metti un più uno
So
sopra.
yeah, you get them in promo packs and foil promo packs at stores, typically for playing in events or prizes for those events.
Yep. Yeah, I love how you can tell how different fans align with the color pie a little bit by which card in this lineup they're freaking out over. Yeah, No More Lies speaks to my heart. Now let's see some of
No
the
More Lies è una bella
versions
carta,
of
cioè
these
non
5
forte,
cards.
ma una bella
main set,
carta.
of course, outside the promo pack. And then we have Showcase Dossier. So talk a little bit about this treatment.
Yeah, so the Showcase Dossier treatment, right? I mentioned how the magnified are instant sorceries. Here we can see the Dossier are creatures.
Che
and the reason
carine.
for that is this is really, like, if
Mi
you
piacciono da morire.
imagine sort of a detective pin board, we saw that in the video, sort of as you're piecing together the
Sono tutte belle queste
the
art.
suspects and the victims. We really tried to embrace that sort of look and feel of,
Il draghetto non mi fa impazzire, nel senso che sembra un po' troppo giapponese come stile, non so come spiegarmi, però molto belle. E poi i flavor text sono stupendi.
On the whip cracker, it's sort of notes. It's sort of in that style. So once again, just another take on the flavor text to sort of embrace the feel we were going here with the Showcase Dossier treatments.
Yeah, and we talked about it before. We don't have a slide for it here, but there's an invisible ink treatment as well, correct?
Yes.
Giusto, c'è anche l'inchiostro invisibile.
The Showcase Dossier have an invisible ink version for, I think it's 14 of the mythic rare creatures, right? And so now you don't need a black light to see that. I mean, you certainly can get a black light and have a good time, and they work under that. But you can see them with the naked eye, and sort of there's a video that we've shown as part of the first look, and you can sort of see it come to life. And they have like fun doodles, fun notes, and they're just a really outstanding, fun new treatment that we've done.
Yep. And we are going to show off one other cool treatment, which we haven't shown off yet. But
un nuovo trattamento che non hanno ancora fatto vedere.
If people want to know like where and how to find these things, the Your Collecting article, which goes up on Daily MTG, is the place to be, right?
Yeah, my collecting article. If you're like, hey, I want to know.
Uscirà un articolo su come trovarle, con quali probabilità sul sito.
Right, I have it in there. Down to not just like 8%, 8%, but it'll, not that that's the number, but it'll say like 8.2%, right? So very precise. We want to make sure that, you know, as people
Io che mettano le percentuali di scoperta di quel tipo di trattamento. Ok, vabbè, ci sta, lo fanno sempre. A Play Booster, è vero. Diritti a Mayor Karlov introdurrà le Play Booster.
And then the collecting article also has more details about the Play Booster.
Ok, ci saranno più dettagli sulle Play Booster in quell'articolo.
And then I know we'll talk about Clue Upcoming, details about that, tons of details in that article, and it shows off
Quindi ce lo leggeremo poi quando uscirà.
Well.
Absolutely. Speaking of fun content, you know, it's not a set unless we have really cool borderless dual lands, and these ones are new.
Nuove dual?
Awesome, and let's show them. So these are lands with the basic land type.
Oddio.
And they do enter tapped,
interessanti.
but when they enter the battlefield, you get to surveil one.
Yeah.
Saranno giocate?
I mean, one of the things that, you know,
sono fetchabili, entrano tappate, entrano e sorvegliano. Non lo so, il fatto che entrino tappate e non abbiano modo di entrare stappate non mi fa impazzire per niente, però sono fetchabili. Sono fetchabili. Che strane, che strane, ci sta surveil. Però sono un po' dei templi più forti, vogliamo dire così? Sono dei templi più forti? No, sono rare queste, sono rare.
In addition to the borderless versions, which you can find in play and collector boosters, of course we have the main set versions as well.
Ecco da dove compariva il coso, le hedge maze. Ho capito. Che belle le Thundering Force, però, bellissime. Sono tutte belle. Anche Shadowy Backstreet carina.
The rare mythic slot. So,
io mi tolgo un attimo perché così potete vedere il Meticulous Archive, che è quello bianco-blu.
And you're going to get an extra rare as well. So that's a nice.
That is. I didn't even know that before the show.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Okay. So that's our look at the treatments. We did mention earlier that the commander cards, some of them show up in extended as well. So we are going to show off the face cards for
I comandanti.
the four commander decks.
I comandanti, ragazzi.
And then the decks
Dai,
will be shown off next week
comandanti.
by some of our favorite outlets in the community. So let's take a look at the four face cards for the decks. First up, we have
Caust Eyes of Glade. Quando una creatura che controlli viene girata a faccia in su, peschi una carta. Che si è girata in questo turno. Infligge danno a un giocatore, poi sfida una carta e poi puoi tappare per girare una creatura attaccante. Ok, se tu attacchi con le creature girate a faccia in giù e poi le giri all'ultimo per pescare. Simpatica, non brutta. Poi a costo 2 è proprio golosissimo. A costo 2, secondo me 2-2 a costo 2 è golosissimo, secondo me, da giocare. Lo giochi come niente. Molto bello.
Right, and you can definitely, the Deadly Disguise, of course, as you can tell from reading cost.
Questo è carino, mi piace. Un comandante a costo 2 è intrigante.
And you actually even get an extra bonus when you do it.
And it's just such a simple effect, but it's really powerful.
Piacerebbe sapere poi la lore che c'è dietro questi comandanti, e la sapremo perché usciranno gli articoli. Ma quello è un coniglio, è uno scoiattolo, ha uno scoiattolino sul braccio. Mirko, oh, è tornato.
Revenant Recon deck. So
Mirko Voss.
this is a deck that cares about surveil and also about bringing creatures back from the graveyard when
quando
surveilling.
sorvegli prendi un
I
più
want to
più
point
uno.
out, like the card before, this is a detective.
Nella end step puoi riprendere in mano una creatura
and
con
that just really plays into the, of course,
forza
the themes of
inferiore
the murder mystery
a quella di
set,
Mirko
right?
dal tuo cimitero
You wanna be
e
filled
non
with
riportarla in
detectives,
campo di battaglia con un finality counter
and
bello.
so here,
Fai
right,
surveil
you
e
get
poi
bonuses for
rianimi,
surveil,
figo, mi
and then
piace,
once
costo
again,
3 anche
Magic's
agile
filled
da
with cards
giocare,
from,
molto agile.
that have surveil, and
E
so
surveil,
that's
ce ne
always
sono di carte
fun
che fanno
to be
surveil,
also wanna point out,
tantissime,
this is a secret, one
bella.
of the things that does
Questo è
do
un
is
bel
it's often
comandante
kinds of
anche,
detectives.
molto carino.
Once we made a detective a class,
Anche perché poi si può gonfiare
this
anche
is
in
a
altri
vampire
modi.
detective. You'll notice the set
Quindi
is full
figo.
of just different
Il
kinds of
nero
detectives,
può pompare,
It's
il
fun to see,
blu
and that
no, ma il
each
nero
guild,
sì.
I think, gets its own detective. Like that we flavor all of it, different detectives in different ways. It's fun. So
Yeah, and we'll see as previous, and it's not relevant to the commander decks, but we're talking about it. We'll see as previous season goes on. There are actually cards that
Bello,
care about
bello. Mi
previews
piace.
being detectives.
yes, there are.
All right. Let's see our third card. So this is Morska,
Morska.
Undersea Sleuth,
Ok.
a Vedalken Fish Detective.
Non hai
So
il
it's
limite
green,
di
white,
carte in
blue,
mano.
and this is
All'inizio
the
dell'upkeep
Deep Sea-
investighi
Deep Blue Sea, which is the
e ogni
pun,
volta che peschi la
obviously,
seconda
for the
carta
deck
del
that cares
turno metti un
about
più uno su di lui,
So it
due
has
più uno
that
più uno
whenever
su di
you draw
lui.
your second card each
Bello,
turn,
bellissimo,
gets bigger,
bel
you go back
design,
from hand
mi piace
size,
un
and at the
sacco.
beginning of your upkeep investigates. You can do all kinds of things with those.
Mi piace davvero un
I'm glad you
sacco.
brought up the deck name.
Questo è
It's by
molto
far my
bello.
favorite deck name of the.
I'm generally against puns, but this
Mi
is
piace
it's
molto.
a really good one.
Questo mi piace veramente molto.
It's really good, and of course, I mean, as you talked about earlier, clues and drawing your second card, just
Per quello che fa
pair
è
perfectly, and
costa
then,
anche poco,
you
mi
get to
piace.
investigate every turn, and so you're already basically just for a couple of mana, your commander's turned on and powered up, and Vedalken Fish Detective is, of course, a well-known trope, and so we really, I think the team
We really hammered that trope.
And for those asking about why this isn't a Merfolk, Gavin Verhey actually did talk about this when we first revealed the commander decks a
Perché non è
while
un
back.
tonno?
I'm sure if you bother him on Twitter, he will respond again, but he does have a tweet a while ago where he talks about why this was a Vedalken Fish Detective and not a Bant Merfolk for those of us, myself included, who want
Non vuole fare un Merfolk Bant, ci sta.
Last,
Ha
certainly
senso.
not least, we have Nelly Borka, Impulsive Accuser. So this is where it takes suspects.
Nelly Borka, parente di
for the
Bel
mechanic from the main
Borka.
set and ratchets it up, we'll say 99 notches. So this is for Blame Nelly Borka, Impulsive Accuser.
Divertente.
4 with vigilance.
Uhu.
Whenever it attacks, you get to suspect a creature, and then goad all suspected creatures. And then it has that bonus down at the bottom for people attacking each other.
Questa è molto carina, è un design Boros diverso, mi piace. Ma più che altro per la diversità del fatto che è Boros Gold, quindi è interessante. La trovo molto interessante come idea. Fai in modo che gli altri si picchino da soli e poi bam, finisci l'ultimo facendo i sospetti le tue creature in modo che attaccano l'ultimo. No, è interessante, mi piace. Anche questo è un bel design, interessante.
And then Nelly also just like, because it's like, oh, if they only leave back one blocker, right, you can either have Nelly become suspected, or you can make their creature not be able to block, and so lots of good ways. I'd probably make their creature not be able to block.
È un bel design, non dico che è una carta forte, ma un bel design, mi piace come design. È interessante, diverso dal solito Boros, aggressivo. È interessante, molto interessante. Mi piace, mi piace, mi piace.
That we include in the commander decks to, a lot of times people want their commander to be just sitting off to the side, so that way there's sort of a permanent marker of, oh, who my commander is. So, and it's a little bit thicker of a cardstock, so you don't, if you do shuffle it into your deck,
It's noticeable.
It's noticeable, a little easier to pull out.
Qua stanno dicendo che la
And then,
carta
of course,
quella
as
foil
it
etched
notes,
vanity card è un po' più
the extended
spessa
art Nelly is
e quindi
available in non-foil
non
in the collector booster.
non
All
funziona.
right. We still have a bunch of stuff to talk about. We're going to keep
La
talking.
lista la vedremo
Right now,
mi sembra
the Wii is
il
going to be myself and Mark, not Wii,
24-25.
because he's not here. But Mark
Sì,
and I
esatto, è
spoke
molto
a while ago.
buono
So I'm gonna
Soboros
throw
in
this to
politica,
Mass Blake
in
to
marchesa
talk about
politica e quelle
the
cose
whole
lì.
puzzle experience. We've hinted at it. Some pieces of the puzzle have gone out that people have seen, but there is a meta puzzle for Murders at Karlov Manor.
Ok, c'è un meta puzzle. Questa è la cosa che mi interessa, mi intriga tantissimo, ragazzi.
For a lot of people. So I'm going to throw it to Past Blake and Mark Gottlieb to talk about that puzzle experience. Thanks, Future Blake. We are indeed here to talk about the Murders at Karlov Manor puzzle experience that is woven
Sì, però
into
lavate
the set.
ste cuffie.
And here to tell us
Per
a bit
Dio,
more about
lavate
that puzzle
quelle
experience. The
cuffie.
architect
Sono
of said puzzle,
orribili.
Mark Gottlieb. And to get us started, so people know what they're in for, Mark, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background with puzzles?
Great. Yeah, I have been passionate about puzzles my entire life. Back in the day, I wrote my undergraduate thesis at MIT about constructing puzzles and published a couple of New York Times crossword puzzles. I've been on staff at Games Magazine. I've written puzzles for the World Puzzle Championships, Microsoft Puzzle Hunt, 5 different MIT mystery hunts, and I've been a member of the National Puzzlers League for over 30 years.
So people should expect a challenge, certainly. But let's get a little bit more specific about this puzzle, Mark. What should people be looking for as they head into pre-release weekend on February 2nd?
As far as I'm aware, the puzzle hunt contained within Murders at Karlov Manor is just completely unprecedented. I've never seen anything like it. There will be 13 puzzles in total.
13 puzzle in totale, 13 enigmi.
And the last one is a meta puzzle, which means you'll need the answers to all of the first 12 puzzles to solve it.
E l'ultimo deve avere le soluzioni degli altri 12 per risolverlo.
Is a website found at
C'è un sito.
ravnicadetectiveagency.com. Starting with the first puzzle that's in the pre-release kits.
Il primo puzzle è nel pre-release.
Will unlock on the website each day for 13 consecutive days. And they'll stay up and active. You don't need to solve the puzzles on the day they become
i puzzle usciranno una volta al giorno per 13 giorni consecutivi.
There are pieces of evidence you need to collect from within certain cards in the Murders at Karlov Manor card set, or from within specific aspects of the set, like the pre-release kits, the bundle, the commander bags.
Ok, alcuni puzzle richiedono come soluzione parti nelle carte, altri parti nei prodotti.
All right, so as people work through these puzzles and they come across them and solve them, what do they do with the answers?
Each puzzle page on the website will have a box where you can submit an answer to see if you solved the puzzle correctly, and it'll tell you. And the box will also accept partial answers, so if you think you found a clue or an intermediate message, you can enter it there.
Ok, puoi scrivere la risposta e loro ti dicono se è giusto o meno, e riprende anche risposte intermedie dicendo sì ma no.
Are there hints if someone gets stuck? Can they get a little push in the right direction?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ci sono degli aiutini, se vogliamo,
information that solvers can access. You can think of these as hints. I like to think of them as a way to let you customize the difficulty of the puzzle you want to solve. If you want to solve on hard mode, just don't click the buttons. If you don't have time for that, or you think the puzzle's a bit underclued, just get the extra info. That's why we put it there.
All right. So some of the geniuses are in our community. Go out there, they solve this puzzle. What do they get at the end?
So I do want to emphasize this isn't a race. It's not a contest. The bonus here isn't a prize you get for solving the puzzles. The bonus here is that, hey, there are a bunch of extra free puzzles involved in the set. But that being said, after the 13th puzzle drops, as soon as one person anywhere in the world submits a correct solution for it, we will release a bonus web fiction epilogue that points to the future of the game. So there is a collective global reward.
Nel momento in cui uno risolve il meta puzzle, aggiungeranno un capitolo in più della storia che darà delle cose, degli indizi sul futuro della trama di Magic.
The Murders at Karlov Manor puzzle kicks off February 2nd at pre-releases at your local game store. So definitely check those out. Now back to you, Future Blake. All right, thank you, Past Blake and Mark Gottlieb, for that look at the puzzle.
Andiamo alle special guest.
Murders at Karlov Manor. We got a couple things left we are going to talk about here in the present at this time.
I'm excited for the puzzles. I worked on the team that did the puzzles. I'm very excited for the puzzles.
The puzzle, I'm blown away that this is all coming together like in the product. It's very cool. Speaking of in the product, let's talk about special guests. So,
vediamo un po' le special guest.
Oh, we were the special guests.
You are the special guest.
So let's talk about these other special guests.
Other special guests.
Questo sono molto curioso. Special guest.
We don't come in the booster packs.
Mike, real quick, special guests are relatively new. So, what are special guests?
Yeah, so special guests debuted with Lost Caverns of Ixalan, so just the set prior to Murders at Karlov Manor. And what they are is we wanted to go back and find cards that are reprints. They're all reprints in terms of mechanically
Ci sono ristampe.
existed in Magic before, and bring them into the new borderless style. Update their art, really just give them a new.
Ok, sono letteralmente ristampe full art che si possono trovare al posto della lista. E sono abbastanza rare da trovare.
Into Magic. It doesn't change their legality, right? So,
non cambiano la legalità della ristampa, quindi se una carta è legale solo in Legacy, non è che la ristampa in Karlov Manor la farà diventare legale in Standard, rimarrà legale in Legacy perché sarà un set a parte.
We're going to look at all of them.
Yeah, we're going to look at.
Guardiamo tutte le guest star.
So these should all be familiar cards that you love.
Nel caso tolgo la webcam.
New art. And you can find them in the play boosters in non-foil and then in collector boosters in foil.
Ok, nelle play booster non foil e nelle collector booster si possono trovare foil.
In the play booster itself, we've updated the list. We've really trimmed it back.
La lista è più piccola.
The reprint cards on the list are 40 cards.
Ci sono solo 40 carte nella lista adesso.
Uncommons, and then 10 rare/mythics, and then we have additionally these 10 special guests. So about 1 in every 7 packs, instead of a common, you will get either one of the 40 reprint cards from the list, or one of these 10 special guests also from the list. So
in play boosters, they're playable. In limited, they're playable.
Yeah,
all these are playable.
They're all playable in limited from play boosters, the reprint cards, the new special guests as well. So that was part of sort of the consideration of picking them. Of okay, hey, how do we add a splash of fun variants? Go back and pick some classic cards, and that's one of the reasons we trimmed the reprints with the Planeswalker symbol in the bottom left corner down to 40. Previously, it was 300.
Yeah.
Too much variance, too hard to
meno male che hanno capito che la lista era troppo sparsa.
Down to 40, it really let us hit all those limited play goals as well.
Yep. All right. No further ado. Let's see the 10 cards that are special guests in this set. We've already seen Crashing
la
Footballs,
webcam.
but there are some fantastic cards in this set with some amazing new art.
Yeah, and so like to me, a card like Victimize is a great way to show off. Like,
allora, Ghostly Prison, Fabricate, Show and Tell, Tragic Sleep, Victimize, Field of the Dead, Drown in the Lock, Tireless Tracker, Crashing Footfalls che abbiamo già visto, e Gamble. Tutte carte interessanti.
Yeah, you can play Gamble some more. But yeah, just
tutte carte interessanti.
Tireless Tracker, right? Returns, and so there's a place where it's like, oh, you can see mechanics.
Ok, così almeno vedete tutto.
Returning here and working perfectly in MK.
Ristampine.
Right, once again, probably, besides Landfall, which
Tireless Tracker è un'ottima carta, Field of Dead è un'ottima carta, Ghostly Prison, Gamble, anche Fabricate, Show and Tell, sono tutte buone carte, tutte ottime carte.
Right, you'll have cards that have higher mana costs, and so
tutte ottime carte.
There may be an opportunity to
bello, sono molto contento.
Which sounds just fun to do. Of course, always a constructed staple, especially in Legacy Commander style formats.
Yep. And I see the questions in chat about will these be on Arena? For the most part, the answer is yes. So what Arena is doing with
arriveranno
special
anche
guests
su
is there
Arena?
will be some tweaks here and there where this card or that card may not be included and something else is
Alcune
included
carte
instead.
potrebbero non essere
So
incluse.
the Arena team will be sharing that on their social media and on the blog, what those changes are between the special guests and this. It's not the whole list, it's a couple cards.
Yeah, there's a dedicated article talking about the list, talking
Ci
about
sarà
special
poi un
guests,
articolo dedicato alla cosa.
In there it talks exactly about Arena and some of those swap outs that they did.
Yep. All right. And then finally for this show, I know we've been getting a lot of questions about this right here, which some people might have been eyeing, which is the Cluedo.
Ma è piccolo! Io me la immaginavo una scatola più grossa. Io immaginavo una scatola un po' grossa.
Cluedo, those are pretty much interchangeable. But it is this very cool, standalone, self-contained game that might tell us a little bit how this works.
Yeah, so
Raga, sono €70 quella scatolina lì.
About, of course, is like when you think murder mystery, right? I think the game we all played as kids was Clue, right? And it's like okay, who done it, right? And so we went and said, hey, could we marry the elements?
Cioè, per carità, un gioco da tavolo più o meno.
And we've sort of brought the best of both
Costa
together.
€70.
They come in this awesome box, but there's no game board, right? And so instead, you in this box you get 8 20-card packs, right? And you
Ci sono dentro 8 pacchi da 20
you
carte.
shuffle them together, right? So anyone who's played Jumpstart, it's sort of that same.
È una roba stile Jumpstart, quindi peschi, prendi 2 mazzetti, li mischi insieme.
And then you have, as we see here, the.
So it looks like that. Yep.
Yeah, right. So that's the Simic Combine package. So there's.
Come Jumpstart, ok.
So there's 20 possible of those. 2 Simic Combine
packs like this, very similar to Jumpstart.
Right.
You'll get one of these in here.
Right, and then you get 8 of the. Eight of the right.
The boosters.
You get eight of the boosters. You can see in there. So.
Ok.
Right. So that's how you build your deck. You take 2 of those packs. You shuffle them together, and then there's the murder mystery piece of it, right?
Yeah.
You have, I think we showed off Mastermind Plum, the knife, and the library.
Yep.
Right. And so you put those into your little confidential envelope there, right? That's solving it.
Yep.
And then you pass out the rest of the cards. There's 21 in total.
It's got the clue,
You have your
thing,
notepad, right? But there's no board. Instead, the way that you ask questions is by attacking the other players, right?
Ok.
And so
you play Magic.
You play Magic. You're right. You play
Giochi a Magic e per fare domande attacchi.
Right, and when those creatures attack successfully, when they deal combat damage, that is how you get to ask a question, right? And you'll say things like, Blake, do you have Mastermind Plum? With the knife in the library, and you would look at your hand, and well, if that was your hand, then you could
These would go near, yeah.
Right. If they were all in there, you wouldn't have any of them, and so you would say no, and play would continue. But one of the things I really like about that from a gameplay standpoint is it gives you motivation to attack all of the different players, right? Because you can win the game by playing a game of Magic and just knocking all of your opponents to 0.
Ok,
right?
puoi giocarlo
Or you
alla
can
Magic.
win by successfully figuring out, it was Mastermind Plum in the library with the knife, right?
Ah, ok, oppure puoi indovinare le cose, come Cluedo.
Magic. With the contents of the box, it's for 3 to 4 players. Of course, for replayability, you can build your own decks, right? If, you can bring limited decks, draft decks, more powerful decks. And so if you want to play 5, 6 players, as long as people are bringing their own decks, they can do that.
Ah, quindi le carte sì sono uniche, però alla fine è Magic, quindi si può usare anche i mazzi propri.
I really like that you have motivation.
Giochiamo Cluedo, ma usiamo i nostri mazzi Modern.
Of course, once again, in multiplayer is always a thing. And you want to say, I want to attack Blake because I haven't gotten information from him yet, right? Typically, our games have been about 60 to 75 minutes when you play with the contents of the box. So it's fun, it's fast, it's great to play again and again. And I'm just really thrilled with how the product came
Non lo
out
so.
in total.
Non so se sia
And
una
of
cosa
course, you
carina o
do
meno,
get,
non lo so,
with
non riesco
each one a foil,
a immaginarmelo
a
giocato,
foil
devo
shot
essere
land, we have
onesto.
the 10. That's not used
Potrebbe
in the
essere
gameplay
carino,
portion.
però.
It's just, you know,
Cool little bonus.
Yeah, it's a cool bonus. We want people to try out and have a fun time with it. So who doesn't love foil shock lands? And they're actually all inspired by the world of Clue, right?
Sì, ovviamente per venderlo ci hanno messo dentro la Shockland Foil.
Names, right? They'll all have, you know, Hallowed Fountain is still Hallowed Fountain.
Yeah.
It's just sort of it has a little
has
bit
the
of
look of Clue.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing I want to point out, so a couple things. So there are a bunch of cool, unique components in here. Here's your little thing to hide your pad and your guesses and your own cards. It's got the confidential sleeve, of course. And then, so there are unique cards in this product. And,
Sì, ci sono carte uniche.
they are both pieces to play the Clue portion and pieces to play the Magic portion. So we have some preview cards. So let's put some of these
Ci sono
up. We can
carte
talk a little
nuove,
bit
tra
about the unique
virgolette,
cards.
legali in
So this is Mastermind Plum.
Commander,
Right, so
principalmente.
Mastermind Plum here, you can see it's a Magic card. So beyond, like when you're playing the Clue version itself, it ends up just, you know, either in somebody's not Magic hand,
Yeah.
but you know, it's one of
Their
the
hidden information.
Their hidden
sei
information, right?
figo.
Or it could end up in the confidential answer envelope.
Yep.
Right, and so it's used for that. But then beyond that, you know, we're like, hey, this is a great opportunity to bring these characters that people love from Clue into Magic. And so you can see here we brought them through Universes Beyond. We've given them design. So that way you can, you know, build a Clue deck, use them to build a Commander deck. You know, they're new, brand new Magic cards. So each of the 6 characters are brand new, as well as the 10
Ti
lands.
fa
Now the 5
Pyrexian Arena,
weapons
diciamo,
that we,
quando
included, those are both in
casti
Murders at
spell
Karlov
usando
Manor,
tesori.
and in the Clue product. So it's sort of
Right.
more of a variant there.
Bello, bello
So we're also
lui.
going to show off, because you got to have a person, a weapon, and a location. So let's show off a location as well. This is
La
this is
location?
the library.
This is
Ok.
the library, blue-red, right? I think that.
Eh sì,
one of the
queste
fun
terre
things the team
comuni
got to do
tappi,
is say,
paghi
all
4
right,
e investighi.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Sono
right. And
meh.
we added
Non sono un
10th
granché.
room, like the classic Clue board game has 9 rooms. We added a 10th because, of course, we have the 10 guilds.
Yep.
Right. So that was the
Each guild, 1 room per guild.
yeah,
Yeah.
one room per guild. So you know, before we show them off, you can go and make your own color map of how you would have laid out the guilds. I will say that the secret passage is the 10th.
Makes sense.
That's the 10th one.
I know what guild that is.
Who knows? Who knows? That's for those real detectives out there to figure out. And they all have the same design here, where they all enter tapped. They add manas of the appropriate color, and then for 4 tap you can investigate. So once again, you don't use that as part. These end up in the confidential envelope for Clue, but you know you can go and use these. For playing. They're Clue lands, right? And I super love that they had
Tanto non le giocherà mai nessuno le Clue Land, secondo me. Sono carte non così interessanti.
So here's a real quick fun behind the scenes. Booster Fun, when they're doing things, they make a lot of different ideas because not all get used. And they came up with the idea of Clue lands before we even were doing a thing with the Clue.
Oh, nice.
And we all thought they were cool, and then this came up like, oh, we got to do the Clue lands with Clue.
Right. It was just such a perfect match. And you can tell since you investigate, they made
Sì, loro
clues,
pensavano già di farle
right?
e poi ha detto ma perché non le aggiungiamo a Cluedo, tanto sono le terre indizio. Clue in America Cluedo è Clue, quindi Clue.
Right, so you can see here it's
Il
artifact Clue
coltello.
equipment, right?
And this is a cycle in the set.
Yes.
Right.
Ed è un
So
ciclo.
and then they all have sacrifice, you know, knife in this case, draw a card.
Anche sono tutti
and then
equipaggiamenti
they, you know,
che sono anche
they're
delle
uncommons,
Clue.
they have fun
Ok.
abilities, and so yeah, I think it's really great. Now the one weapon we didn't include was the revolver. It wasn't part of Murders at Karlov Manor because you know we don't include guns in mainstream Magic.
Non hanno
so
messo il
we
revolver
didn't have
perché
the
non
revolver
c'entra
design,
niente
so we
con
left it
Ravnica.
out of here, but instead
Ha senso.
that 10th land, so it's sort of
Lo vedremo
the
in
right number of
Under
sort of,
Junction.
Sure.
information that you need to go and find out.
Gotcha. And so I saw the question about legality. So these have their own, if we can put Professor Mastermind Plum back up there, actually.
Ecco,
So
Professor
these have their
Mastermind.
own expansion symbol and three-letter code. They are not standard legal.
They're not
No,
standard legal.
mi immaginavo non
They
fossero
are
legali
commander
standard.
Legal, legacy legal, so those eternal legal.
Sono legali nei formati eterni.
And we did that because, for one, the only place that you can find Mastermind Plum is in the Clue product itself, right? And so that was a big piece of wanting to make sure.
You don't want to make that standard legal.
Yeah, we didn't want to make that standard legal, right? We're not printing too many of these, from the get-go. And so, right, we didn't want it to be standard legal for a number of reasons. And also, too, I think when you're trying, when you have sort of this one chance to create a design for a card from such a classic brand, right? Clue's celebrating its 75th anniversary. We didn't want to hold back by sort of balancing it for standard, right? Instead, just one.
Ok, hanno detto semplicemente che non sono carte da standard perché non volevano. Non avevano voglia di essere costretti dal power level.
They're Ravnica-ish, but they're our versions of their current versions of the characters.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so there's one other type of card in this which we haven't talked about. Is there are unique cards which are gameplay cards. So much like the Jumpstart cards, and we have a preview of one of these. So this is Lavinia Foil to Conspiracy. Same legality, but these are new cards.
Carina.
Right. So here for Lavinia,
ti fa le clue e poi ti dà anche il mana per romperle. Bella, bel design, simpatico.
Right? So there's going to be a Simic Combine and a second version of Simic Combine, or as we're looking here, an Azorius and a second version.
Yeah.
So each one of the rares, we made 20 new rares because there's 20 of different packets. So, if you open up an Azorius packet, not all of them will have Lavinia in it.
Ok, non tutti i pacchetti avranno Lavinia, non tutti i pacchetti Azorius, perché ci sarà della varianza.
10 new uncommons. Now those uncommons are shared, so both Azorius packets will have the uncommons in it.
Invece le uncommon saranno tutte negli stessi pacchetti, in tutti i pacchetti, sarà solo le rare che cambieranno.
The Ravnica themed boosters. You get 8 of those in each product, so if you wanted to go and get them all, you'd have to go and buy a couple boxes worth to get that. So, and once again, they're pretty
Se volete collezionarle tutte, compratevi più copie di Ravnica Clue Edition, spendete più volte €70 per questo prodotto.
And then the rest of the Azorius themed booster that you get is pulling from Ravnica cards. It's great now that we've been back to
Brutta
Ravnica
scelta
a
di
number of
parole.
times. There's a lot of good designs that we can tap into to build out these packs to shuffle together and make for a fun gameplay experience. Right? Oh, good.
Yeah, I just want to stress, Reggie led this product, and we tried really, really hard to just make a really fun Magic variant. I mean, if you've enjoyed, Plane Chase or Arch Enemy, one of the fun things about Magic is that we can add extra elements on, and this really is something new we're trying, where we're taking this other thing, Clue, and really weaving it into a Magic experience. And so I know some people were a little. It's a Magic variant. That's what you're playing. You're playing Magic. We've added some Clue elements on, so there definitely is Clue to it. So it's a combination, but it's a fun Magic variant. So if you enjoy playing with your friends and having this is just a fun variant. And I heartily recommend you trying it. It's super fun.
And everything you need to play is found in one of these. You get every one of these suspects, locations, and weapons.
Yeah, all 21. Yep.
All 21 come in one of these.
Sì, invece le carte specifiche di Cluedo saranno in tutti i pacchi, assicurate. Almeno quello.
These cool little things are great. And so, like you said, you can replay it then.
You can replay it if you want. You can, leave the decks that you've shuffled together like that. You can pull them apart and mix and match them that way. You can build your own decks, right?
Your own decks.
You can just build your own decks. You can, and depending on the type of game you want, you can bring decks of any sort of power level. I'd encourage you to include creatures in them because while there is another way to
Salve.
inquire, the primary way that you do it is just by attacking, right? And so you saw there with Lavinia Vigilance, that's a great mechanic because you really want to be attacking to solve the mystery.
Right.
And I don't know if I highlighted this. One of the ways I think the game innovated on the original Clue was if you do make your final accusation and you're wrong, in classic Clue you're out of the game.
Yeah.
Right?
Ah, ok, se poi fai l'accusa sbagliata sei fuori in questo gioco, vabbè, come il Cluedo classico.
And then he has to sit there while we finish the game. Here, though, if you guess wrong, if you make that final accusation wrong, you still can play because you can just kill everyone else. And sure, you didn't solve the mystery, but
you can keep playing Magic.
You can keep playing Magic.
Sì, oppure puoi semplicemente non accusare nessuno e picchiare tutti. Alla fine è Magic.
Magic together as well.
That, finally, after an hour and 15 minutes, or hour and a half if you count the debut, is everything we have to share today on about Murders at Karlov Manor. But we have another week plus of previews coming up.
Okay, sì.
Previews in earnest start today. You're going to start seeing them around the internet. If you head to dailymtg.com, there's a bunch of useful tools there and articles. We've got your collecting article. We've got your first preview article. We've got the where to find article, which tells you where previews are going to be.
Io ci sono in quell'articolo su dove trovare le preview.
We've got stories. So the killer was revealed today, but the story's not over. So there are a couple more episodes after this talking about the fallout, what happens once Alquist Prof figures things out, because there's more to come. And of course, there's the puzzle experience, which is going to be ongoing starting at the pre-release. And then additionally, we're doing a cool thing with the card image gallery for those of you who love Limited out there.
Okay.
One of the big pieces of feedback we always get is that on the last day, there's a big dump of a bunch of commons, and then people start figuring out the limited format. But we're going to be seeding commons straight into the card image gallery, also found on dailympg.com.
Oh, finalmente mettono le comuni già subito, ogni giorno metteranno delle comuni invece di fare il dump finale nella image gallery, in modo che noi, poveracci, a farci le guide al limited, possiamo non impazzire. Grazie Wizards. Grazie, questa è una notizia incredibile per me.
We're going to actually play Clue. So if Clue sounds intriguing, but you want to see how it actually plays, we're going to do that next week. So
settimana prossima vedremo come si gioca a Cluedo di Magic. Va bene. Direi che possiamo staccare. Cioè tornare al... Sì, perfetto. Allora ritorniamo qua per concludere. Sì, esatto, chissà dove dobbiamo vedere questi spoiler. Ebbene sì, infatti vi do l'appuntamento ufficiale il 23 alle 18. Esce un video sul canale in premiere, quindi mi raccomando non arrivate tardi, oppure dovete recuperarvelo dopo, dove ci sarà la mia carta in anteprima di Delitti al maniero Karlov, e questo è una cosa che voi non dovete perdervi, soprattutto se siete fan da lungo tempo del canale, perché ci sono delle citazioni che so che apprezzerete molto. Detto questo, vi ricordo anche che questa settimana esce Terra Sol Ring. Mentre stavo guardando tutta la presentazione, il PC dovrebbe aver finito di esportare il file. Appena chiusa la live controllo che non sia corrotto anche questo, perché questo purtroppo è la vita che devo fare. Ma com'è andata? Vi è piaciuto seguire insieme la presentazione? A me è piaciuto un sacco avere il vostro feedback diretto. Invece ragazzi, su Discord com'è andata? Eravate almeno qualcuno su Discord? Fatemi sapere qua in chat, io vi aspetto mentre scrivete, perché c'è sempre un po' di ritardo con la chat. Sono molto contento di aver potuto fare questa piccola live insieme a voi, e d'ora in poi le live più o meno saranno sempre intorno alle 6 o nel weekend, vediamo, perché tanto ormai questa fascia oraria per me è la migliore per fare live, quindi direi che va benissimo così. Quindi ragazzi, sono le 7:30. Perfetto, mi sono perso i commenti di Teloremon. Guarda, va bene così. Me li recupererete voi in chat poi nel gruppo Telegram del Bazaar, di cui dovreste trovare qua sotto da qualche parte in descrizione il link. Comunque sono le 7:30, io vi lascio andare a mangiare, quindi amici, gang, grazie per essere stati con me per la presentazione di Delitti a Maniero Karlov. Vi do appuntamento questa settimana con Terra Solaring, e la prossima settimana, il 23, mi raccomando, non mancate, vi voglio in premiere per la rivelazione della mia carta in anteprima, che mi è stata data direttamente da Mamma Wizards. Carissimi, buona serata.